and welcome to another episode of the Sports Insiders. I know we've been off the air for the past couple of weeks. I've been going through some personal things. Those things over with now. Let's just say moving always has been and will be a bitch. I don't mind relocating, but I hate packing. I hate the process and all that. But everything's good. I'm all settled in my new place. Internet's running and stuff. So everything's good. But before we get started, follow us on all of our social media channels. We're on YouTube. Probably viewing this from YouTube right now. We're also on X, Facebook. Also got two accounts on TikTok, Sideline Sports and Sideline Sports One as well. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and notification bells for all updates as well. So, before we, Sean, how you been doing, man? What's been going on the last 2 weeks?
No, everything's been going good, man. Just enjoying these MLB playoffs and college football, and NFL is finally picking up now that these guys have a couple weeks under their belt. So it's all been good.
Yes. I mean, it's been quite a bit going on throughout the sports world. You know, we got AEW Wrestle Dream coming up on Saturday. We've got the dynamic duo of Cam Scatterbo and Jackson Dart out in New York. We've got a lot of things, but quite possibly the biggest stunner of them all, in my humble opinion. How about Braun Breaker spearing Seth Rollins in half, turning on him? Did you see that?
Yeah, it's funny because I put my head down for a second since they had rolled the credits, and then all of a sudden I hear more noise. I was like, "Oh, what is going on here?" But it's interesting, especially since we faked the injury before. Now there's all types of hoopla, whether he's actually hurt again or what we're doing here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens Monday. They definitely found a way to maybe compete with Monday Night Football by doing this early, because I don't think I think everybody kind of expected this the Raw after WrestleMania, not just some random Raw
Yeah,
in
not just out of
October.
random. Exactly. And especially with this happening, because you kind of figure like, okay, so the vision in some way is going to be like in war games, right? Because that's like, kind of right around the corner. But now this just kind of throws a wrench in it. We have no idea who's going to be in war games. And I know that it's like 6 weeks away, you know what I mean? But still, by this time period, or even by like say September, you kind of have an idea of like who's gonna be there. Like, for example, last year, you knew the original bloodline was going to be there. You knew that the new bloodline was going to be there. You know, in some form, you just had to wait for like kind of the announcement of the teams, right? Now it's like we 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 don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who's going to be there.
Yeah, for Raw, it's definitely up in there. I think on SmackDown, it seems based on what they did at Crown Jewel, I think it's MFT and the Wyatt Six. And it seems they're kind of trying to separate Solo from being just part of Roman's dynasty bloodline and trying to give these guys their own kind of identity outside of the bloodline. Should be interesting because obviously they're trying to have that group carry SmackDown.
They are. They are indeed. Are they really going to move towards 4 War Games matches? Because usually it's one for the men's and one for the women's. You figure, right? And they take wrestlers from Raw and SmackDown and stick them on like a team.
Yeah, it's just interesting with, like you said, now with this up in the air on the other side, do you have enough to do one from Raw? I mean, you definitely have enough on the SmackDown roster. Obviously, NXT and the women have enough if they want to do something. But what do you do with the men's side on if you're doing just Raw and SmackDown separately? Unless you're just doing the tag titles with the MFT and the Wyatts, and then, like you said, we're just gonna mix and match a couple guys here.
Yeah, very true. Well, we'll see. That remains to be seen. But we're going to go into our first topic here, and that is the EA Sports deal that actually occurred in September. It was a $55 billion deal. A few notes on it. So in September of 2025, EA agreed to be acquired in an all-cash deal by a consortium comprising of Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, private equity firm Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners, was actually led by Jared Kirshner. The deal, once again, roughly $55 billion in enterprise. The shareholders will receive $210 per share in cash. That's 25% premium. Financing, you figure, is $35 billion in equity, including PIF's 9.9% stake, and up to $20 billion debt, $18 billion drawing at closing. More on that, Sean?
Yeah, so actually, as we got on, I saw JP Morgan is going to pick up this debt, but they're going to spread it across several of their partner banks. So it seems that part's been picked up now. I know, they've got some few other hurdles to think, but from what I've heard, the shareholders are going to approve this. I think they've already had a preliminary vote, and it passed the preliminary vote.
Hmm.
The shareholders are going to approve this. Um, Obviously, it's going to take some time, like a fiscal quarter one of 2027, and it still has to go through regulatory approval once all this paperwork with the $20 billion debt is drawn up. Obviously, I think it's smart on JP's part to spread it across several banks versus them just taking on the whole 20 billion in debt. Um, so we'll see what kind of stake each of those banks takes of this debt. But that would be interesting to see how many banks are going to be involved in this whole maneuver here. Um, they'll be delisted. The remaining Redwood City, California, the CEO will remain the same, but it'll be a privately owned company when this is finished.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the expected closing will be quarter one of fiscal year 2027, pending a shareholder and regulatory approval. Post closing, excuse me, EA delisted, remains headquartered in Redwood City, California. Andrew Wilson will continue to be the chief executive officer. So now on to some strategic rationale and risks. So the upside is you got a strong IP portfolio across sports and simulation franchises. The AI and the efficiency potential to improve margins and manage debt, and also the consortium aims to reshape gaming and entertainment positioning. More on that, Sean.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting because there's been a lot about what they could do now in terms of, I guess, the hoops they jump through because they're public, even when they're developing a game, versus what they won't have to go through because they're going to be a private company, and how can they can even put AI more, into their games. Obviously, we've seen it with some of their games already, Madden, NHL, college football. They're already integrating, where the CPA CPU AI catches on to what you're doing and adjust. So it'll be interesting to see how much going private will allow them to even up their tech level, especially on the AI side, with private funding. It's going to be a lot different. There is obviously some concerns about what they're going to do in games in terms of potential advertising and things like that. But we'll see how that goes. I think if they're smart, they're going to know to kind of stay away from that because the crowd for gaming is still, mainly under 30. I know there's some of us over 30 that are still playing, like you
Still
and
playing,
myself.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, but I don't think you're going to have those ads in the games where the majority of the crowd is under 30, under 25, and then obviously you're going to have parents like, yeah, we're not buying this, and it's a different aspect to take, and I think you'd actually be hurting the sales if they go down that route. They've got some risk. They're going to have a big repayment once this is all done. It'll be interesting to see what their demands are financially in terms of paying back what they have to do outside of the cash portion of this.
Right on.
Um, they're already facing, U.S. Government scrutiny. I haven't seen much come from foreign governments yet, but you know, gaming is a you know international thing. It's not like PlayStation's just sold here. It's sold everywhere. Um, so it'll be interesting see what the other governments eventually come to say about this, especially with Saudi being involved. I think they'll go through this kind of the same scrutiny Live Golf went through when they first came up and started buying a bunch of our U.S. golfers with crazy contracts.
Yeah.
Um, I think eventually this will kind of just pass over as long as like we talked about, that they don't take advantage of the situation here and all of a sudden there's some propaganda or other things involved in the actual game advertising and things like that.
Right, and then also there's some Senate and governmental concerns as well. So Senators Blumenthal and Democrat out of Connecticut and Warren, Democrat out of Massachusetts, raised alarms about foreign influence, data privacy, and national security. Concerns include Saudi's access to EA user data, influence on gaming content, and exposure of AI assets. And there's also questions over whether EA employees might require registration under FAR post acquisition. Sean, you want to touch more on that?
Yeah, so there's been a lot coming out whether are they going to shut down certain divisions. I know there's rumors of them shrinking the BioWare division that's kind of in charge of Dragon Age and Mass Effect right now. With the criticism Dragon Age has been under, There's talk they're going to wipe that division completely out, um, shrink the Mass Effect division to just a handful of heads, let them finish the current game, and then they're going to be gone. And then obviously, do you now have to, coincide with being basically an employee of a Saudi Arabia company, even though you're in a United
United
States based
States.
building?
True.
So do you have to fill out this paperwork, almost like having an extra passport, but for your employment?
Hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see where that goes and how it changes EA's employment, just the staff overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's see. There's also criticism of Jared Kushner's involvement as politically influenced rather than commercial. There's also a request for full CFIUS review and congressional oversight, not to mention 70 million plus EA player accounts raise risk of misuse for surveillance and propaganda, of course. Now, implications for EA Sports and major franchises. So you figure Madden, FC, UFC, they remain the core revenue drivers. There's a possible shift toward more microtransactions and cross-platform integration. Potential for narrative or content influence tied to foreign ownership interests and risk of backlash from fans if the leagues of creative control is perceived as compromised. To close this out, Sean, what do you got?
Yeah, and so I think the main titles are safe, but the fear is, we already have a lot of microtransactions in these games. The main attraction, the Madden and FC and even NHL to an extent, college football to an extent, is the Ultimate Team mode. Ultimate Team is really for someone that wants to spend more money outside of the base value of the game. You could play Ultimate Team without spending money, but it's really hard to keep up with the guys that are spending money inside that mode.
True, just like
And
2K.
yep, exactly. And it's getting worse in terms of I feel like I don't know if it's getting worse or if because games are not coming out as fast, people are really just these are my 3 5 favorites I get every year. So I'll spend $200 $300 in Ultimate Team, and even though Madden's a $60 game, now I've spent $300 on a version of Madden that I've actually spent just $240 on digital crap. But this is if those prices go up, the fear is that it's going to kind of shrink the library. We're going to focus on these titles alone, kind of push these other titles to the side. And EA Sports, as much as it's quickly advertised in games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age as an EA game, obviously it doesn't say EA Sports, but those games will suffer. The Sims I could see surviving, and they'll add more microtransactions to that. But it'll really depend where they want to go with this. If they feel like they have to up the price because of their financial position on the $20 billion in debt, we'll see how it goes. Could they raise the game price overall? I've always been a proponent that at some point I think you're going to see these games stop being yearly releases. They'll get yearly upgrades, and every 2 or 3 years they'll get a new game.
True.
Honestly, that's what Madden and college football is for the most part, anyways. Same with NHL, same with NBA 2K. Like NBA 2K got a real overhaul this year, but you could honestly kept 2K from 23, done 3 updates, and then made 26.
True.
I think a lot of games are going to start going towards that Street Fighter Tekken model where you get 3 4 years out of one title, but they
Yes.
add all these seasons, passes, and
Yes.
characters, and update the roster and make sure they're doing the big update that they would do yearly, but we're not going to give you a whole new title because actually we don't give you a whole new title anyways.
Yeah. And then even, down the line, maybe a few years later, if someone was just getting into playing, 2K, it's like, okay, well, and let's say it's like a year before they actually put out a new title. They would
Yeah,
sell the previous title with all of the add-ons for like, I don't know, $100 or something like that. And it's like, okay, it comes with all the downloadable content from like the last 3 years, you know, and this will get you all nice and set up for 27 or 28.
yep. I was on the marketplace earlier, and they have a Tekken with the first 2 years of stuff because we're setting up for year 3.
Yeah, 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 but for sure. That's easier to go to because for so long we had seen people say like, man, this is just like last year. It really isn't any. Just put a patch in there for a roster update and a uniform update, or if a team got a new stadium or a new logo, and that's it. Just keep it going. But
Yeah, especially like we've said, especially why they all of a sudden stop updating the rosters during free agency, but free agency cards hit an ultimate team. So you
Yeah.
know they have the ability to patch in free agency moves, but we're not going to give it to you in the main mode where you can use it in franchise, but you can go pay for it in ultimate team.
Yeah. Yeah. That's insane. But moving on to our next topic, and this is our league championship series update. So over the last couple of weeks, everybody has seen it. How the Dodgers took out the Reds, the Yankees eliminated the Red Sox, Cubs took out the Padres, Tigers eliminated the Guardians, and a bit of a revenge match. Mariners took out the Tigers, 15 inning game five, instant classic. Blue Jays took out the Yankees. Dodgers took out the two seeded Phillies, and oh boy, that final play. Um, And then the Brewers took out the Cubs in a 5 game series. So currently in the ALCS, the Mariners lead the Blue Jays 2-1. Game four is tonight. John, you want to touch on this series?
Yeah, so it's been a good one. I mean, the Mariners were close to look like they were going to jump out to a 3-0 lead last night. They jumped out. I believe they were up 4-0 or 4-1, and then Toronto just woke up and ripped off 13 runs and actually, ended up winning 13-4. So 13 unanswered runs to finish that game. Both teams have had one 10-run game. That's definitely not unexpected with these offenses, especially the way these teams built at the deadline. Both of them really added more to their offense than to the pitching, and maybe they knew like, hey, it looks like we're going to face these guys. We need to be able to out firepower them versus rely on our pitching to keep it low scoring because these guys are still putting up 5 runs a game despite who's on the mound. Now that being said, there's actually been 2 3-2 games in this series.
Yeah.
So, but it's been a good series. I think Seattle will take it. I think the Blue Jays, they're not really struggling. I just think Seattle's just the better team right now, playing just a little bit better, pitching's just a little bit better. So I think they'll take it in 6. I don't think they'll take it 4-1 or anything, but I think they'll end up taking it in 6.
Okay. And then on to the NLCS, and currently the Dodgers and the Brewers are tied at the top of the sixth, 1-1. Dodgers lead the series 2-0. Um, let's see the Brewers. A few notes here. The Brewers saying playing style again. It's all the Milwaukee Brewers have kind of been that almost their team. Um, okay, they'll win the division. They're kind of the class of the AFC. They're kind of the class of the AL the Central.
100. Yep.
Oh, not Central. I'm
NL Central.
NL Central. Yes, damn it. Okay, they're the class of the NL Central for the time being, and it's like they'll get to the ALDS the NLDS and then or the NLCS and they'll get outclassed by somebody. So it's always kind of been
Yep.
like almost there, you know.
Yep.
But I see this note here that says that their regular season ball hasn't exactly translated to the postseason. It might win you a series, but that's about as far as it goes. It's almost like this is the Brewer ceiling.
Yeah, and it seems like, and it's funny because I watched a few Brewers games down the stretch, and I watched it on the Brewers broadcast, and the broadcasters were bringing it up constantly. Is this going to translate to postseason wins, or what are we going to see when we're seeing less pitches? We're seeing better pitchers. We're not seeing the 4 5s. We're not even seeing the 3 as much, depending how much rest is in the series. So
Mm-hmm.
you're facing a lot of 1s and 2s, and if they struggle, you're facing some of the best niche relievers in the game on these teams at this point, who come in for an inning or two, shut you down. But they rely on base hits more than the homer, which is, as much as they had a little bit of a power outburst this year, which was kind of an outlier if you look at their last couple years prior to. Um, they rely on putting pressure by getting doubles, stealing bases, hitting for the sac fly, hitting for the opposite field on purpose to move guys ahead. You know, they play more small ball still than anybody else in the league. As everybody else has obviously kind of gone with this, we'll just hit the homer and a strikeout kind of attitude, but we're just going to hit for power.
Yeah.
Um, but they're one of the few teams that still plays small ball. Tampa's another one of the few teams, and Tampa kind of has to because of their financial situation. I wouldn't say that the Brewers have a financial situation like that. They've gone out and they've gotten guys like Christian Yelich. They've made big acquisitions at the trade deadlines and in free agency. And not a knock on Yelich because he's great for his WAR, his wins above replacement, which is great for the regular season. But in the playoffs, it's not helping them out at all.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be opposed to move him and get a couple of extra pieces that maybe hit for a little more power, and move someone else to the leadoff where you see these other teams are they're putting Lindor in the leadoff. I saw the Phillies a couple times this year put Harper at lead. There's no more. We have to have a speed guy in the leadoff spot.
Yeah. I mean,
It's we need to get either something going or we're not worried about someone bunting or you getting a drag single or hitting an infield single from that first spot. Let's get something going immediately.
yeah, yeah, and you know what? News came just yesterday that Alex Bregman is actually opting out of his contract. He's going to re-enter free agency. What do you think about the Brewers going after Bregman?
No, I think it would be a big move, especially, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago. I know this is a few years down the line, but figuring that would be a 5-year contract. When they realign this by regions and Milwaukee ends up back in the AL where they used to be,
Yep.
I think that's a huge move, especially when you're going to face a whole different type of lineup over in the American League. I mean, even if they're going to even call it that, unless they're going to call it Eastern and Western, like's been rumored once they hit the new CBA in 2029. But I think that would be a good move for them because I think where they struggle with teams with the Dodgers, and we've seen it, and they're doing it right now. They've got 1 run through 6 innings. I don't know if that's changed in the last few minutes, but this would be their 3rd game in this series with 1 run.
1 run. Yeah.
You can't just all of a sudden put 4, 5, 6 up during the year, usually pretty consistently. But then in the playoffs, even with the Cubs, there was a couple games where they had 2 runs, 3
Yeah.
runs.
They let the
It's
Cubs
not
hang
gonna
around and get back in the series.
it's not gonna get you past these bigger lineup teams, even though those teams may be hitting for 265 or even 250. They're getting more home runs. They're getting more doubles because they're hitting the ball over your head versus relying on speed and base hits.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, look at last year in the what was it, the NL in the divisional series. I mean, the Mets took them out. Why? Because the Mets were putting it over the wall with power. They had Soto, they had the polar bear, they had Lindor.
And when you
That's
can come up and put a 3-run home run on the board, that goes a lot quicker than getting a guy to first, moving them over again. Maybe we squeeze 1 run out of this inning, and if we're lucky, maybe we get 2, or maybe we start rolling and everybody gets a couple base hits. But it's not a style that plays well in the postseason, and it looks like it's about to fail them again.
yeah. It doesn't translate over whenever it's like, oh well, let's just do tit for tat, a run here, a run there, like you said. And you're facing a Dodgers team that can score in bunches. They have these 4 or 5 run innings. You end up getting blown out pretty soon. Game's over by like the 6th inning.
And then I had, especially we had the note here as of noon, they hadn't even named their starter for the game, which is even, especially we're at game 3 NLCS. You should know who you're handing the ball to in a crucial situation when you're down 2-0.
Right. Because if you drop this game, people are already saying after going down 2-0 and dropping 2 home games at that, people are already saying this series is already all but over.
Yeah.
You drop game 3, oh, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
It-
I think the Dodgers are going to get them here in 4 or 5. I don't see them even pushing the 6 games the way they're playing.
all right. And to wrap the whole show up, your updated World Series prediction.
Yeah, so back in June, we had the Rangers and Dodgers with the Rangers pulling the upset. So right division, wrong team. We got the Mariners in 6.
You got the Mariners stunning the Dodgers in 6 games.
Yeah, and it's funny because we talked about, well, they didn't do anything with their pitching. They're facing teams that you just need to out hit these teams you're facing. And I know obviously you win ball games out hitting the team, but you're facing teams like Toronto and the Dodgers who are at any night can put up 5 to 8 runs. It's a lot different than if Milwaukee pulls this out. You're not worrying about a team that's putting up 5 to 8 runs versus you.
Yeah, I mean, like if the World Series was, if somehow Milwaukee got past the Dodgers, and the World Series was Milwaukee Seattle, dude, Seattle has got a 60+ home run guy who might take home Most Valuable Player. Then they also got a Rosarena. Then they got J Rod. They're not hitting those guys in Seattle.
If somehow they pulled off this miracle, I would pick Seattle in 4 in that situation.
Oh yeah, Seattle sweeping them. Yeah, Seattle sweeping them. No doubt about it. Seattle sweeping them. They taking them right out. But that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on all of our platforms. We'll be back at you next week. Wrestle Dream, AEW Wrestle Dream is Saturday. We just may come with some revenue from it and also some results. So until then, for Sean Rossi, I'm Denzel Snipes. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.